Experienced roleplayers are used to a certain type of RPG. As a result, a certain mindset on how to roleplay has formed over time. I know it certainly did for me. This is why when you try out a narrative-style RPG like Fate, for the first few times those same people often struggle a little to grasp how to fully utilize the system's potential. So let's discuss a few quick points that I'd like you to think about if you already have this mindset. Firstly, who is your character? In traditional RPGs, it's not unusual to explain your character by what they are. I'm an elf wizard, an experimental cyborg, or a super speedster. But Fate makes you really explain who your character is, rather than what. The way the normal character creation works with the cooperative story, how the aspects of your character can represent parts of your personality, or factors of how your life affects you. Something to think about when making a new character in Fate. Next, what over how. If I'm playing Pathfinder, and I'm in an encounter, it's not odd to hear a player state what he does. Something like this. I take a move action to move 30 feet up, a swift action to activate my healing, and then a standard action to attempt an attack using power attack. Here are my rolls. It's very precise, very mechanical, and sometimes that's fantastic, especially for those of us with backgrounds in math or technical skills. We geeky people enjoy that type of thing. But the best way to handle this in Fate is actually quite different, but no less fun. I know I've certainly become to quite enjoy it. Instead of just stating your intended action, it's best for the GM to ask the player what they really want to do, what the outcome they are truly looking for. Part of the reason for this is there's often more than one way to tackle the problem within the rules. If the player says he wants to heft his sword and slice at the bandit, that's great, but what does he hope to achieve with this? Does he want the bandit to favor a wound on that arm, thus making it harder for the bandit to use it? Does he want to do so to force the bandit into a defensive position, and making it so the bandit has a harder time attacking others? Is he hoping to hit an artery and cause a bunch of blood loss, causing the bandit to become woozy over time? Does he just want to try and hurt the bandit enough that maybe he can try to take the bandit out of the fight completely? There are various ways you can do this action. So what you really need to think about isn't the how, but the what and the why. Why are you doing it, and what do you hope to achieve? Next, Fate has no damage system. Fate has no actual damage system. No, seriously, there are no health boxes or hit points. The stress boxes represent anything from how much luck to how much stamina a person has left in the fight. It doesn't actually represent getting hurt, just what you're not even taken out. This is why your stress boxes refresh after a scene. It doesn't represent how hurt you are. Maybe you have a specific injury represented by a consequence like a hurt shoulder or broken leg, but there's no real system for tracking damage in Fate. It's okay to fail. In a traditional RPG, if you fail, there's a good chance you're dead, or something major happened. That's not always the case in Fate. Fate has the same style as a movie or TV show. Failure in those mediums rarely take the main characters out. Instead, it just affects the plot and moves it in a new branching direction. Failure shouldn't always be the end, only a branch of the plot. Players also have the option to concede. It even has the bonus of automatically giving you a fate point if you do. Sometimes conceding to a conflict is the better option if you're to be taken out. It's another thing, if you have no stress boxes or consequences left and you are taking it out in a conflict, that doesn't necessarily mean you're dead. You could be knocked out, too exhausted to move, too afraid to continue, maybe restrained or tied up. Whoever or whatever takes you out has the choice of what happens. Next, Fate is not a reality simulator. This system is not a reality simulator. You don't have to constantly think, well, how would this work in real life? It's not real life. It's a story, and the Fate story is all about larger-than-life, epic, and awesome stuff. So when it comes to Fate, what matters first is the narrative. As long as it still fits in the limits and boundaries of the universe your group has agreed upon, it's more important to progress the story than to think of some mechanical means to simulate how it will work in reality. Don't react, act. Fate is a narrative-driven RPG with a focus on story. Players have a much bigger influence on the game than most other RPG systems that push on them. It's not up to the GM to supply 95% of the story and hope you just discover it as you go. The aspects of the game and your characters help springboard you into the plot the GM has set up, but it is up to the players to be proactive and actually expand upon that plot. Remember, everyone has a little creative control in the Fate RPG. An example of this is The Secret Door. In most RPGs, you enter a room and say something like, well, we're stuck at this vault door, I'll make a perception check to look to see if there are any secret doors. If the GM planned that there there are secret doors on this detailed map layout, then there you go, you may find it. In Fate, you work more in the theater of the mind. It's less likely you'll have the same area mapped out, and more likely you'll just treat it as an abstract zone the players have to get through. So a Fate player is more likely to say, I see there's a vault door in front of us, it looks hard to open. But as an archaeologist that studied tombs like this, I bet I remembered reading about secret doors the workers use to bypass the security when working on the tomb. The player spends a Fate point if it's called for, maybe makes a lore or notice check, and voila, a door is found. The GM didn't even have to plan for it. Focus on the important. In Lord of the Rings, when you get to the point where the Fellowship of the Ring enters the Mines of Moria, you don't spend hours watching as they unfold the exact map of the various winding tunnels and long periods of travel. Instead, it's narrowed down to specific scenes and locales, a fork in the path, an old tomb, being chased across the bridge, etc. Fate is structured to be much the same way. Unlike most RPGs where you travel square by square, unlocking the map as you go, and deal with this on an action-by-action basis, Fate focuses more on the important story bits. Entire scenes can be solved in a single decision or roll. You don't always have to look at every detail. Say some of the survivors in the current season of The Walking Dead came across a handful of zombies. They're so experienced at this now that they can effortlessly dispatch those zombies as long as another factor doesn't come into play. So the group could easily just make a single roll with appropriate advantages and to say how successful they were in that scene without having to spend a lot more time on it. And lastly, use what you got. Physical combat or action is inevitable in most games. Although not necessary, most groups like a little action to go with the drama. But that doesn't mean you always go up and smack things in the head. Not all characters are combat focused. If your accountant character tried to go up and take out the seasoned soldier with a punch to the face, well, your accountant's gonna have a bad day. But the accountant is smart, maybe creative. Use what the character has to help better the others in your party, and maybe a little better at what you're focused on. Create advantages by distracting the soldier. Try to drive the soldier into such a rage he becomes reckless. Maybe modify the environment by tipping the nearby bookcase over on top of him. This isn't like most RPGs, not everyone is built to be a combat powerhouse. Characters can be varied and different, just as like real life people. Use that. Be creative. So hopefully this expands your mindset a bit. I might have more videos on similar things in the future. Have a good one, eh?